Hi, this is Tim Bost, and today we're talking about what is happening to Bobbi Kristina Brown's money. This is a hot issue right now. Of course, Bobbi Kristina Brown is in the news because of her recent death. This was Whitney Houston's daughter, had been in the news after her mother's death, and it was in a coma as well. She died on the 26th of July after being in a coma since January. Was found in suspicious circumstances, face down in a bathtub after a reported incident of domestic abuse. So there's a lot of mysterious stuff around her death, and of course she was very wealthy, having inherited her mother's fortune from her mother's singing and entertaining career. But there's one important complicating factor in this whole story of Bobbi Kristina Brown and her death and what's happening with the money. That complicating factor is a fellow named Nick Gordon. And Nick Gordon has had an interesting history with Bobbi Kristina for some years. He was described as being her brother, and apparently he claims that Whitney Houston adopted him when he was about 12 years old, and he felt that she was more his mother than his birth mother was. But apparently there's some question about whether that was a legal adoption or not. At any rate, the two of them spent time in the same household, Nick and Bobbi Kristina, and after some years it was announced that they were actually an item as well. And so there was a lot of controversy around that. Questions about that relationship. Was he her brother? Was he her lover? And then there was the report that they had secretly been married, and he was described by her on different occasions as being her husband as well. So there's some real mystery around him and his role both prior to and after the time that she went into a coma in January of 2015. So we can learn a lot by looking for the money in the horoscope and looking at the comparison of the charts of Bobbi Kristina Brown. We've got her birth chart here on the inner ring, and then Nick Gordon's birth chart and the outer ring of this, so that we can see some of the relationships of the planets between the two. Now, we're seeing things here mainly from Bobbi Kristina's perspective, and we're looking at the planet, or the sun, rather, in the chart here, as being indicative of the status of a brother. The sun is the ruler of the third house in her horoscope, so we would look to that for descriptions of brother relationships. And what we're seeing here then with Nick Gordon's chart is that we have an alignment here with Bobbi Kristina's sun hitting the midpoint of his sun and Neptune. Now, this particular planetary combination is all about fantasies and delusions and sometimes outright deception as well. So this whole question about his being her brother is highly suspect, I think, to say the least, and certainly a lot of confusion and illusion around that whole relationship in that perspective. Then we can go back to the chart here and look for what we would consider indications of having a lover in her chart. Now, the fifth house is concerned with love affairs and adventures of that sort. So we look at the chart of having a lover, and here we're seeing that the midpoint of Saturn and Neptune in Nick Gordon's chart forms a square to her Venus. Now, this Saturn-Neptune combination is all about chronic weaknesses and also losses that can occur because of things like drugs and alcohol and broken promises of one kind or another. And certainly we suspect, at least, that drugs were involved in their lifestyle, if not in her actual comatose period and her death. So the question is, if he's not the brother or the lover, whether we would look to find out the relationship of having a husband. And of course, with Sagittarius on the cusp of the 7th house of Bobbi Kristina's natal chart, we would be looking to Jupiter in her natal chart. And here we see a very interesting arrangement here. This is a yod pattern with 250-degree angles formed to her Jupiter by Nick Gordon's Mercury and Mars. And that's quite an intriguing combination there, because this suggests broken dynamics and things that don't turn out as anticipated, that kind of fall apart in various ways. And this specific planetary combination in the yod pattern, which is also referred to in astrology as the finger of fate dynamic, can indicate the notion that violence, that is to say the energy of Mars, can be equivalent to communication, at least in his mind. Not a particularly outstanding dynamic there in terms of a marital relationship, and certainly we at least suspect that there was some domestic abuse involved in this relationship. So it does not bode well for being a brother, a lover, or a husband in particular. But the real question here is what's going on with her money. And as we look at her chart, we have Saturn as the ruler of the 8th house in her horoscope, and the 8th house is concerned with inherited wealth, and that's certainly what we're concerned with Bobbi Kristina, the wealth that she inherited from her mother. And in this case, what we're seeing is that her natal Saturn, the part of the chart that suggests inherited wealth, impacts very, very strongly the midpoint of Venus and Neptune in Nick Gordon's chart as well. So what we're seeing here then is a planetary indication of deceptive hopes. That is to say, things are we're hoping to get access to money that we may or may not have a right to, or may not be able to get. And there are all kinds of secret feelings and a bit of subterfuge involved as well. Now, this doesn't necessarily indict Nick Gordon as being a bad person here, but we want to look at these astrological configurations, and we do note that prior to Bobbi Kristina's death, her guardian had filed a lawsuit against Nick Gordon, claiming that he had physically abused her and had stolen some of her money as well. So there are some interesting dynamics going on in this case. We haven't seen the end of it yet. But as we look at this core question of what's happening to Bobbi Kristina Brown's money, it becomes very, very important to take a look at the money in the horoscope. This is a key to understanding what's happening in financial dynamics, not only in times of financial success, but in times of financial stress as well. That's why it's important for you to know how to find the money in your horoscope.